Oh no, if you did send a text, you gotta start all over again.
I gotta do it all over again.
Okay, Annie,
Hey guys.
We're gonna vamp for a minute. Hold on, let me make sure that we've got
Hello everyone.
Yes.
And welcome.
We're coming up on Facebook right now. We'll wait for a few people to jump on while we're also getting our lives together because
I got to text everybody. If you guys don't have our text number, it's 702-466-1150. Text us anytime. You won't miss a thing because we're going to tell you every time we do something really cool like what we're doing right now. Right, Meow?
Why can't I see the... why isn't this... Okay, here we go. All right, I've got Facebook pulled up. I'm going to let everybody get excited and curious about our awesome guest today while Jay gets a little text out to our community.
Hey, everyone. Hello.
Happy Sunday, everybody. Ooh, and we've got folks jumping on. Hey, Michelle, Trisha, Lindsay, Samantha, Ellie, Kim, T, Robin. Oh, it's a good day. It's a good day. Hey, Annie, before we do a bona fide introduction, are you having a happy Sunday?
I am. You know what? Any Sunday with you ladies is a happy Sunday. And plus I have
good answer.
Yeah. All you need is, wait, let's see that again.
What does it say?
All you need is love and coffee.
Yes.
Oh, and coffee.
Yes. Yes.
I'm dyslexic.
And I'll add to that cats.
And kitties, yes, too. Exactly.
Yes. And cats too. Okay, we've got a bunch of folks on already.
Welcome everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on this beautiful Sunday. We are super excited to be joined by none other than Annie Chang from Healthy Pet Hacks. Now, guys,
Healthy Pet Hacks. You guys, this is going to be so good.
So this is going to be a great interview and a lot of good information for all of you guys because, first let me tell you how we found this beautiful woman here. It was 3 weeks ago, I think. 3 weeks ago, and one of our beautiful VIPs actually reached out and said, "You gotta check out this girl." And I was like, "Whoa, what?" And I found out that.
What did you say?
Whoa, what? One more time. Whoa, what?
Instant replay.
Slow-mo. Whoa, what? Okay.
Anyway, so I checked her. I perved you a little bit, and then I saw that you had this workshop going on. And so I signed up for it because it was all about cats and diets and raw feeding for cats.
And how often do we see something that's all about cats and diets?
Like never. So I was like, I'm signing up for that. And so I took her course and I was blown away because it's so rare to find people that, especially people that we didn't know you at all. And like in the healthy pet world, there's, it's a growing industry, but but they're all talking about dogs, right? And for you to actually specifically be talking about cats was like blowing my mind. So when I took the course, everything that you said was like spot on with what we believe and what we try to, tell everyone that has any questions about their cats. And then you talked specifically about prescription diets, which is one of the top subjects we're going to talk about today. But if you'll just give like a short introduction to yourself and how you came to be where you're at today, please.
Hi. Awesome. Hi. So thank you for having me on this show. So actually, I came from the medical industry. I had spent the majority of my career there, about 17 years, basically working alongside doctors, surgeons, nurses, hospitals for the pharmaceutical and the medical side of the business. So, I was a firm believer that like drugs is the best, the prescription's always right. Whatever the doctor says, I'm like, yes. I was sharing a funny story. How many of you guys have ever gotten a gift from your vet? If you do, just like put it in the comment, because I did. I was like that person. In fact, I was at the vet so often, I got a Christmas gift from my vet. So, but it wasn't until, I had multiple cats and every one of my cats, were dry fed because, that was easy for me, right? Because it's convenience and we work. I get it. And then when my cats started getting sick though, I went to the doctor, asked them, they put them on a prescription diet. One of my cats had early chronic kidney issue. The other one was diagnosed with urinary issues. They had the crystals in the urine. And so, it was just like, okay, so I, asked them, what should I do? Is dry okay? Yes, it's all right. Go ahead and, do these things. But then my cats were still, they didn't, none of them made it till 10 years old. And so that's when I was thinking, something isn't right. And at the same time, professionally, I started really deep diving into how food can really impact like chronic ailments. And so I decided to pivot and started doing nutrition coaching. And my first client was actually my mom. And I took her off of diabetes medicine by just managing her blood sugar through food. And so, I've been doing that time and time again on the human side. And I thought, well, why can't I do that for the pet side as well too? And so that's basically how I got started. And then through trial and error, I mean, I'm sure you ladies can relate, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours doing research. And then I finally formulated the right raw diet. And the cats have been doing amazing. Sometimes maybe a little too amazing. They're out there like fighting with each other in the middle of the night. I'm like, go to sleep. So they're very rambunctious and full of energy. So, but yeah, I've been raw feeding. I also have dogs too, and I raw feed my dogs. And my dogs previously had seizures. Now all of that's gone away. They've had I had one dog with urinary issues that's gone away as well too. So I've just seen some really incredible results, and that's why I hope to share it with everybody.
Yay.
Let's talk a little bit though, because I think that's one of the challenges for us, especially when we know and love our veterinarian, and then there comes a time where there's something that it's like, oh, I don't know if that's the best, and that's a hard conversation or for me, it's a hard conversation to question that. Talk to us a little bit about how you navigated that transition from, just trusting everything and then being curious about what you were seeing in your own cats and then making that transition.
And what was it specifically? Because I know we're getting to prescription diets here. What was it specifically that turned you, or that made you start seeing that in your animals? I mean, I get that there's a correlation between the people and the animals and food and all of that, but what was it specifically? What was your journey with your vet and your sick cats?
Right. So the first cat that was basically Ellie, and Ellie's this like pretty like black kitty. It sounds like Oreo, like the fur is black on the outside, you part it, it's like white on the inside. And so he's basically like, I've noticed that he was just, he was like 3 or 4 years old. His fur wasn't really shiny. I had taken him to the vet. They're like, he's fine. And, of course they ask you, what do you feed? I feed dry. And so when he went back in though, it was just really starting to lose weight, just looking kind of just sickly. And that was when he was about 6 years old. And so they did the blood work at that point, and they just basically told me that, that he had kidney disease. And I'm like, okay.
At 6 years old.
6 years old.
At 6. Yep. And the thing was, it's like, okay, so you're like, wow, what did I do? So then I'm just like, what should I do? And then basically they told me that he needed to be on a special diet. He needed to be on KD, which basically is designed for kidneys. And it's low in protein, it's like low in phosphorus, and that's what kitties need to eat, right? So I'm like, okay. And then I asked my vet, is it okay if I feed them dry? Because, it's easier for me, I could just leave it out all day. And they were like, yeah, it's perfectly fine. In fact, it's actually a higher source of protein. It's a higher quality type of food versus all the other stuff that you get from the grocery store. So I was like, okay. And I had other cats at the time. I had another kitty named Bobo, and I had later on down at the road, I had another little kitty, right? So, I was like, can I just feed them all the same thing, or do I need to separate it? They're like, well, it's actually higher quality food, and there's nothing bad that's going to happen. So it's fine. So I was like, okay,
give it to everybody.
Exactly. Give it to everybody, make my life easy, So I was like, perfect. I like that, But the thing is though, I was feeding this diet to Ellie, and then over the next couple of years, I just noticed that he was just kind of slowly deteriorating to the point where one day I had to take him back to the vet. They kept him there for over a week, just basically giving him IV fluids. And then they told me to come pick him up because there's nothing left that they can do. They gave me a nice bill with it. And then pretty much Ellie basically had multiple seizures and died in my arms from renal failure. So it was just really, really heartbreaking because he was only 8, like he's really young. And so that's when I first was told that, cats at age like 6 or 7 is considered a senior, right? And I'm like, okay, that's kind of odd because cats are supposed to live to like 15, 18, 20. So why is my cat dying at like 8? Maybe he just has a genetic problem, right? And so then there's Bobo, right? So Bobo at that time, Bobo's a little bit younger. He's been eating, the same prescription diet. And then about 3 or 4, I came home one day and he was like trying to pee, right? And I'm just like, whoa, hold on. But then I realized he wasn't able to get anything out. And so he was just sitting there struggling. And I was like, something doesn't look right. So I take him to the vet, and if you ever have a cat that, is having a hard time peeing, you really need that's urgent because they could definitely die. So the thing is, so they stuck a catheter up there. Was not a fan of that. And basically I asked them, like, why did this happen? Why is he getting crystals in his bladder? And they're just like, I don't know. I mean, it's just something that happens to male cats a lot. I was like, is there something I can do? You need to put him on CD. It's a special formulated diet that gets rid of crystals. And I was like, okay. Again, same question. Can I feed it dry? Because, it's easier for me. I'd leave it out all day. Right. So the vet's like, yes, it's perfectly fine. And then, of course, at this point, I had Lulu now, which is another little kitty. And so I was like, well, can I feed Lulu the same thing? Because I have 2 different prescription diets. I mean, it's just easier for me. And they're like, yeah, it's absolutely fine. And so, Boba basically stayed on CD and he never liked it. He was just kind of grumpy, but, he'll eat it, but he never really liked it. And around, I think the age of 6 or 7, one day I came home and I was trying to find him. I was just like, where did he go? He's just like missing, right? Look everywhere. I like basically, walked the neighborhood, put flyers out. And then I noticed when I came back home that one of the doors to the closet was slightly open. I was just, on the off chance, like, what are the chances of Bobo walking into a closet and just staying there, not hearing me yell for his name for the last 4 or 5 hours? I opened the door and there he was, though, facing the closet inside, in the dark. And he literally had peed on himself because he stood there all day. And it turned out Bobo had dementia. And I was like, what? Like, I don't know if you guys, if you have family members or friends that suffer from dementia, it is heartbreaking. And for a cat, he just doesn't know where he's at. And so
and he was 7 at the time.
Mm-hmm,
7 at the time when he got dementia.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so he basically lasted for about another year. He had a really great appetite, but, again, I mean, he didn't make it past 10 at all. So I was just like, wow, that's like 2 for 2, like something is not right. So at this point, I started basically doing more research. And, so when I had Lulu, this is one of the younger kitties now that's been eating these prescription diets for a while. And I've always noticed, I was like, something just, I keep asking the vets. I go to different vets. I've moved several different times now. And every vet, I ask the same question. Are you sure it's okay that I feed my other kitties this food? Because I know there's something that they take out of it. Are you sure it's okay?
Something to make it a prescription, right?
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, you think that there might be a medication in it even because
right.
it says prescription, right?
Exactly. And I just noticed none of my kitties had really healthy fur, like the little ones, their fur was kind of like lackluster. They had dandruff, so they had like these skin danders. And, it's usually like they, just like people, it's like when our skin isn't healthy, when our hair isn't healthy, it's because we are nutritionally deficient in something. So I was like, I don't know, something just doesn't quite add up. I mean, if you look at common sense, like, why am I feeding my healthy kitties a diet that is deficient on something? So anyway, so Lulu basically, he, again, similar symptoms, was kind of getting skinny, looked a little scrawny, took him to the vet. This is about like 6, he was about 6 years old. And it turned out he had early kidney failure at that point. Like, so it was an early onset and they wanted to go ahead and put him directly onto KD. But at this time I started doing some research. So I think, the best thing to do is just make sure you do research. And to your question earlier on, at what point do you contradict your vet? It's just, I have a funny joke actually. What do you call the guy that graduates last in medical school?
What?
Doctor.
Ah.
Doctor. Yep. And
That's
so
true.
and and it's working on the human side of the business. I mean, I hate to say this, there are some doctors that I would not take anybody to. I wouldn't send my worst enemy to because they're either not kept up to date with research, or they basically are just after money. They don't spend enough time with their patients. But a lot of times it's just, and some of them, I've met some really great doctors as well too. So there's a huge spectrum, but I think part of the challenge being in the medical industry on the pharmaceutical and medical side is, we have a lot of the influence and a lot of the education process really has a deep-rooted background with funding with the medical industry, like pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies. One of my roles,
again, though, because I think that's something that is such an important thing to remember, and I think it should be a motivation for us to do our research.
Exactly.
Is that so much? Exactly. Say it one more time about the nutrition and the funding.
So basically, just a background, like my job when I was working in with pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies was to basically go in and influence these doctors, these residents, these medical students, these academicians, and basically help basically influence them to start using more of my products, right? And so there's a lot of money spent in that industry. I mean, my sole job, a third of my job was to basically go into the academic school and influence them, basically do study groups with studies that we basically had funded, peer-reviewed, published studies, I mean, the most scientifically relevant ones, and basically influence them. And because it's, that's why pharmaceutical and medical companies spend so much money in that. They have and not to say it's all bad, but it does influence the academic world. I mean, we would basically provide free drugs, free, formula, whatever it is that we were selling at the time for the residents to use in their clinic. Whatever they get used to using is basically what they're going to use when they go into practice. So that's why so much funding is spent on that. And then, of course, so whatever it's think of it this way. It's like whatever you're learning in grade school, right? If you spend grade school all the way through middle school, right? Or sometimes maybe even to high school, your entire education as a doctor has been basically influenced by these things. And then all of a sudden it's like, so any new information, sometimes it contradicts with everything that you've learned, and it just poses a challenge. And so I think that, as doctors get more pushback or they have patients asking them questions, I think it also forces our doctors to start looking out and also getting more information, more learning. Because one of the things, even on the human side, most people think their doctors really understand nutrition, and that is far from the truth because they get one semester of basically nutrition, and that's it, unless they specialize in it, one semester. I mean, think about it. Like, do you remember your one semester of, something that's not your specialty? I mean, it's like, so
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to add in there that when it comes to our veterinarians specifically, as you're talking about with the funding and the influence, these Hill Science Diet specifically has a group of educators that teach these one nutrition course that some veterinarians get. And then outside of that, if they want any other nutritional information, they have to do that. It's like an elective, right? They have to do it on their own or do it outside. Yeah.
Exactly. And the thing is though, as much as they kind of, they always tell, like, for instance, when I was working on the human side, I worked for a company that had infant formula. We had a whole outreach, breast is best, breastfeed, but when you're ready for formula, use ours. That's essentially what's our, so it's not like it's not like the intention is bad, but however, it's like, when your one semester is all around prescription diets and you're told from the get-go, raw is bad because raw food will cause salmonella and all these bacteria. So you basically just kind of go into practice with that mindset. And so, they basically support you. They will fund like the residents if they have pets that need food, they'll basically give all of that to them. So they get used to working with it. And I mean, they get some results, it's not like, prescription food has a purpose. It serves that one purpose. It treats that one cross section, but the challenge is it neglects the rest of the animal. So it neglects the bigger picture. And so it's like basically there's a what is it? There is a saying, you put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. So essentially that's kind of what we're doing with prescription diets. Unfortunately, our intention is to basically treat it, but however, we're creating a bigger problem in the process.
Yeah, unfortunately, especially with say the KD diet, and it is from my research, it's the same across all commercially prepared prescription diets. And a lot of times they're dry food, right? Yeah. And then you look at the ingredients, and the ingredients are like the KD diet, for instance, it's so low protein, and that's what they've been taught, that we have to, because we have to limit phosphorus, we have to limit protein. That means limiting protein. And that cats with kitty disease or older cats in general should be eating less protein, but that goes against nature of the nature of a cat completely, because an older cat actually needs more protein to support those bones and muscle mass. They just need a higher quality protein.
Well, and you wonder why you see these, kidney kitties or older kitties just wasting away. It's almost that you can tell just by looking at them, by how skinny they are, kind of what some of the issues are. And I think it's just heartbreaking. Tell us a little bit
Exactly.
about, so
We got a lot of comments coming in too.
I know I'm excited, you guys. We've got so many. Also, Jenny is here. Ellie is
Yeah.
here. She loves your kitty's name, by the way.
Aw.
Ellie was the VIP that turned us on
Yes,
to
I
it.
remember.
Yes.
And it's to your point earlier about what you had said about older cats needing more protein. I think we're talking about the same study, right? The one that was done by Dr. Finkel. I think it was like 1994, 1992, where they
It was a while ago, yeah.
and they basically had proven that a cat will actually die. It's called a hypoproteinemia, which is basically not getting enough protein. They'll die from not getting enough protein before they will die from kidney disease. It's
Right.
like, really?
Right,
So
exactly.
that becomes
And that's why
it's really
they're called
insane.
obligate carnivores. That's why they're obligate carnivores, right?
Exactly.
Because they have to thrive on that meat source. So when we're feeding these foods that are so high in corn and wheat and soy and starch and and potatoes and all of these different ingredients, we don't even realize it. We have all the good intentions. Even our vets have the best intentions.
Absolutely.
But because it's limited knowledge, so that's why we're so happy to have you here and for another resource for people that have taken another step and done some more research and can help all of those cat parents out there that really need just the knowledge.
Well, and I'm curious too, because you really went from I would do the same thing. Is it okay that I do dry? Awesome, that's easiest, great.
Right.
And then you're 2 for 2 on this experience, and we're talking about it more, from the technical perspective, but it is heartbreaking. And then you start wondering, what could I be doing differently that could help them live longer lives? So talk us through Lulu, and what were some of the baby steps that you took as you started researching? Because I think that certainly for me, it's one thing to think about, oh, well, I'll put out some wet food instead. We'll have a little wet food treat here because that'll be good for them. That'll help, to going full species appropriate raw diet. What were some of the steps that you took? Take us a little bit on that journey.
Basically what I was doing research and I realized just how bad dry was, right? And so I basically went to wet food because that's the easiest, right? And I must say, I don't know how many of you guys, you don't have to admit it, but I grew up thinking, I remember when I was a little girl and I had kitties, I was like, Mom, you can't feed it human food. Cats need cat food. That's what the commercial says.
We still hear that every day.
Yes.
Every day. Yeah, so true.
And so it's like, no, really, food is food. Cat food is a marketing thing. It's not real. So anyway, but that's where it came from. So everything was just like, it has to be cat food. So I basically went to the grocery store. Actually, I went to a higher end pet store and basically started buying canned food, right? That was the easiest transition for me. It's still cat food. And I was just sitting here and my cats loved it. But I realized I was spending I have 4 cats. I was probably spending about $2 per can. I mean, that's a lot of money. And so that was probably, like 3 or 4 cans a day. And I was like, okay, this has got to stop. We have to figure something else out. And during that time I was doing, and plus at that time, I noticed that they were doing a little bit better, but the fur still wasn't looking great. I mean, it was, one of my cats still had IBD. So Kirby always had, ever since I got him, he had runny stool. No matter what I did, always had runny stool, right? And so even on this like higher end cat food, this canned food, he still had runny stool. So I started doing a lot more research and I was just like, you know what, there's so much information on raw, let me just try it because I see so many great things about it, right? And I mean, honestly, it was a really scary journey because everything I read says you have to get a meat grinder. And I remember reading specifically on this one website where it told me I had to basically cover up the kitchen with like newspaper because it might get messy and it might get loud. So wear earplugs. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be like a crime scene here. Right. And I mean, because when you read about this, it's like this is going to be scary.
It's getting serious. Yeah,
it's serious. And the thing is, so that was one of the things I was a little bit afraid to do raw because I'm like, hold on, I'm taking control of their nutrition, and there's going to be like a crime scene here. But what I've actually realized is, with meat grinders, we'll get to that in a second. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people that hold people back from actually starting to do raw, right? Because that's a pretty big investment when you start looking at prices. And at that time, I remember like I wouldn't even buy a Vitamix because I was like, that's too expensive, And I mean, a meat grinder, usually a good one, is going to be at least a few $100. So if you do get a meat grinder, invest, because otherwise you're going to be buying a new one probably like every year, every other year. But I wasn't ready to make that investment. So I'll say like one of the recipes that I came up with does not require it. But I mean, it was just basically a slow process. I remember at first I was like, ew, what is this? These chicken hearts, like, ew, this is liver.
Girl.
She can't stand still to this day when if we're cutting up meat, like organs, even meat, anything, she's just like,
the liver.
Right. But now I'm just like, oh, look, here, do you want some liver? Here's your vitamin A, here's some hearts, here's your taurine, so it's kind of once you start understanding, like, this is like real food, this is what it's supposed to look like, and I think that's one of the things that we are so far removed from what real food looks like. It can be a little scary, especially coming from a cats are supposed to eat cat food mentality.
Right.
So, but basically, once
I find the gardener in the background.
Yeah,
I was like, this is.
I didn't know the gardener was coming today. Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry about
Exciting day. I love it. This is like the best way to spend a Sunday, right? It's like, yay.
Yeah, it is true. That is true. Okay, focus. I'm trying. So people are already starting to ask some questions, but I want to talk a little bit about, so how long, because I did see part of it was the transitioning. How long did it take you? Because sometimes it requires a transition for us as well, right? So from the beginning of really starting to do this research and feeling like you needed to go in a different direction to actually getting your kitties transitioned to a species appropriate.
Right. From that wet food to eating the diet that you made for them at home. How long was that
journey?
Yeah.
I think the better question is, how long was the pain of paying $8-10 a day for cat food? Because I was just like, I don't spend that much money for myself, like on a can of tuna, So I think from the time I really started digging in research was when I switched all the cats over to like the wet food, and I realized this is really expensive and it's not sustainable for me. And so I started doing research. And so once I basically got all my research together, I would say probably it took me a few months. I mean, because there was so much research out there, which is also why I created a program, so you don't have to spend the months that I did. But from the moment that I made it, I just decided I was going to do it. This is going to happen. And so I just basically made it. And out of my 4 cats, the transition process was actually kind of a split. I had a kitty at that time. Her name is Hash Brown. She was about a year old. Just went to it immediately, just like, oh, great, real food, I had another kitty, which I have 3 senior kitties. They're all about 13 years old now. And one of them, Choo Choo, would not ever touch wet food. I mean, you might as well, she will starve herself before she touches wet food. She looks at me and it's like, what is this dirt? Like, why are you giving this to me? And she'll try to bury it. She hates it. But the funny thing is, I thought I was going to have a really hard time getting her off of dry. But the funny thing is, she went straight to raw food, just transitioned immediately, which I was actually shocked. Now, my other 2 boys, Lulu, which is the one with the kidney issues, and Kirby, the one with the IBD, they were kind of like, I don't know about this. It doesn't smell like, canned food. And in fact, actually, when you start making it at home, it doesn't smell a lot at all. It's actually a very light fragrance. It's not like you open a can of cat food, the whole living room smells like canned food. And so they basically took a little convincing. So for me, I just started basically mixing it, slowly and gradually moving it over that way. So there's days where they'll protest, they'll just look at me and be like, meow, meow, and so I'll sprinkle some little flavors on there. Like I like to use freeze dry for flavors, and I'll kind of wet it and put it on there. But I mean, the thing I noticed immediately on all of my cats is their fur looked better. They started putting on weight. And then the skin issues that they were having went away. And then Kirby, which is the one with the IBD, he never had a day of perfect poops. I mean, he probably was like, what is this coming out of my butt? Because it's not normal. But anyway, he had perfect little poops. And there's days where when I was traveling, I took all of my animals on a road trip for 7 months. And so there was days when I was traveling where I was too tired. I didn't get a chance to basically make food. So I fed them some canned stuff. Lo and behold, the moment I give them canned again, Kirby, the one with IBD, back to runny stool. So it was just like that. I mean, literally, I can see the difference in a few days. It was really magical. So, yeah.
I love that you took your babies on a 7-month road trip. That's brave. That is great. It's beautiful and brave. Oh, I just had a question. Well,
Yeah,
where did it
well,
go?
we had quite a few. So,
Hold on.
and I don't know if they're all questions, but statements. I know Nicole said the grinder issue is what took me so long to jump on the raw wagon.
Yeah. Because a
And-
grinder takes a bit of space. And I mean, like the one that I had bought a grinder and it was about $400 because I wanted something that was going to last. It was heavy. It was like 65 pounds and it took up a lot of space. And so I didn't leave it on the counter. So that's why, you know, for those of you guys, if the grinder is the only thing holding you back, I do have a recipe where you don't need a grinder and you use real bones, because that was the other thing. I was looking at like different places, different recipes, and some of them use like bone meal, you know, and I just, after doing enough research, I just realized that raw bones has so much more than just calcium, that you really need that. That's a very important component of it. So, and that was one of my things too, because I didn't want to make something with just, that was kind of good. I mean, it's good, but it's not as good as it could be. And everything else held the same. I mean, there's really no difference in cost. So why don't I just give them the better one, since I'm going to be, you know, making it anyway?
right.
Okay.
So-
Well, let's talk about cost.
Wait. I was gonna. I remembered my pinky back. I remembered my question. Okay, so that's so because I think we've got folks in our community that are kind of like all over the place, right? Like we've got people that are feeding dry food, and that's where they're at right now, and that's
Right.
fine. Right? There's a lot of prescription diets. There's those that have been able to transition to wet. There's people that are
Right.
curious about raw
Yeah.
and
Lots.
feel like this whole thing of making raw food freaks them out for their cats. So, and we're coming from the perspective of where Jay and I are at right now is the food that we feed is predominantly pre-made raw, right? And we've got a couple of great sources that we use, but
Yeah.
so there's a whole spectrum. Tell us a little bit about, you know, one of the reasons that we do more pre-made raw, to be perfectly honest, is because
Time.
and the information. We feel like the information sometimes is changing. So I'm
Right.
excited to really dive in that you've truncated things into a course
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah. So I mean, I can actually piggyback off of that with
Yeah.
my pinky, because
You guys are
what
so
we
cute.
do
I love
know-
it.
what we do know is that that those that and we actually preach it on our YouTube channel. So what we know is that the way that, you know, buying pre-made raw is easier.
Absolutely.
It's not as easy as dry. It's not as easy as
Not as
wet,
easy as wet.
but it is easier than making it yourself. Now, we spent a year in research trying
Right.
to, like you did, like just going down all the, like, how
Yeah.
do you make it? How am I going to make
Fully
it at home? How am I going to fully
Right.
balance this?
Yeah.
And finally, found maybe, actually, we finally gave up on trying to make our own recipes, and instead reached out to other people that we knew and trusted that would give
Our
us a fully,
formulators.
formulate cat foods that would give us a balanced recipe so that we could
Right.
share it with everyone. Because the biggest issue when it comes to buying food is the cost. When you're
Yeah.
buying whether it's a wet food, a good quality wet food, or a good
Right.
quality raw, are both going to be fairly expensive. The wet food, I think,
Exactly.
is, if you're buying a good quality wet food, it's actually
It'd be
more expensive
Yep.
because
It is.
they don't need as much of the raw that they do
Right.
of a wet food to
Yeah.
sustain their health. However, it is still expensive. And what we know is that the best way to feed your cat is to make the food at home, because not
Right.
only are you saving money that way, but you are also in control of all of the ingredients. So you are the
Absolutely.
source, right? So we always say, check your sources, know where they get their ingredients, whether it's dry food, whether it's wet food, whatever it is,
Yep.
know your source. If you're the source, then you don't have anybody else that you have to trust. You're
Exactly.
trusting yourself.
Absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of the education process, because like if you don't know what each thing does, you don't feel good about it, right? Like if you don't understand it, so it depends on where you are. Some people just give me a formula, I'll just do it, and that's it. Other people are like, show me more. I want to understand the details. I want to know why hearts are important. I want to know all the little components, so that way I truly understand the process. And so as far as like, going like, I think, again, it took probably many of us years to get to where we are today, right? Like I started my cat mom thing when I was like a kid, and I did dry. And so kind of as far as like transitioning, it's like, even if you were to just move from dry to wet, that would be huge, right? That's like really huge on your pets. But I mean, the thing is, the reason why I urge people to consider doing raw is because the cost to do homemade raw is actually less expensive than doing canned. And that's where it just really baffled my mind, because I was just like, wow, it's a big, like, it's a huge savings for me, you know, and it's better.
And I'll add in there that it's actually less expensive to do raw than it is to buy a high quality kibble too. That's what we
Absolutely.
did for many years. And that was really expensive.
Yep, absolutely. And then the thing too is like when you factor in like time wise, because a lot of times people are just like, I just don't have the time, right? Truthfully, if you get all of your stuff together, actual true hands-on time, it's about 30 to 45 minutes. And that's it per one cat for about 10 to 12 days. I mean, that's a one-time thing. You do it every other week. You spend under an hour, you know, and if you're looking at feeding your cat, it's going to be anywhere from like 80 cents to $1.50, depending on what type of protein per day. So, I mean, that's cheaper than like, you know, my cats really love this one brand called BFF. It's like, it's more liquidy, but it's kind of expensive, you know? And of course they don't want to eat, they just want to eat part of the can. They don't want to eat the leftovers. So I end up opening 2 cans for them. I'm like, wow, guys, that's $4. You know what? That was a Cornish hen, you know, that was like, that's like about, yeah, that would have been like your whole week supply of food. You know, what are you guys doing? You know? So I mean, you know, so so it's just really, you know, when you kind of look at that, it's just like this. You know, if you offer a kid like pizza every day or like a healthy meal, they're probably gonna want pizza every day, but you don't want to give it pizza every day because it's not good for them over the course of X number of years. And so, you know, you just kind of have to. I kind of look at raw food kind of like, you know, getting kids to eat vegetables. You know, if you have a really picky kid, you tuck it in, you know.
Well, and that's why I think that transition period is, it was way more difficult for me, I think, than it was for the cats. Not just getting over the hump of the grossness of the wet food or the dry of the raw food, but also feeling like we had kids that wanted pizza all day. And they were not excited about, you know,
if we had kids, she would feed our kid pizza all day.
This little fella behind me, it took almost 6 months to transition. So
it can.
So yeah, there's an instinct to be like, wait, no, you know what? This isn't a big deal. Every vet I know says dry is fine. We don't need to be doing this. It's a whole lot of effort, a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money, a whole lot of research. It's just, you know, never mind. To that point, I want to ask you this question from Shar, because
this is great. Yes, Shar has a great question. I was told by my vet that it was dangerous to feed your fur babies raw food. So is that a lie? What say you?
So it's, in their mind, it's not a lie because that's what they're taught. Keep in mind, like we talked about earlier, how a lot of the nutritional influence in their education was basically sponsored by prescription food companies, right? And so basically you're taught in school that raw is bad because raw is salmonella. And it is true for people. But cats are not people and their digestive system is completely different. And that's where basically the disconnect is, right? So they're taught one thing, but I mean, if you look at your cat, like let's just, as far as, you know, if they ever get their hands on a bird or something, they're just sitting there like chowing down, they'll eat moths, they'll eat, you know, who knows what they get into when we're like, my cats run outside and they play, you know, they walk on stuff, they lick their paws, they lick each other's butts. I mean, you know, it's when you really kind of look at it, a cat has a very different digestive tract than us. We actually have a digestive tract that's 5 times longer. So if we ate raw, you know, unless it's like really sashimi grade or something like that, we are going to get sick because food sits a lot longer in our system. The other thing to look at is also cats have a very acidic body. Their stomach acid is stronger. And so it will kill any of the bacteria and things like that, the pathogens. And if it does make it past that, their bile is incredibly powerful and designed to kill everything else. Plus their actual system, food just doesn't sit that long. So it's what they're designed to eat. So, I mean, so to your vet's point, it's not that they're lying to you. They are just taught that. That is just their education foundation when it comes to nutrition. And so they were taught to basically treat based on prescription, you know, and things like that, and drugs. The thing is, though, I will say, if you make a homemade diet that is not nutritionally balanced, then yes, that is bad because, you know, like for instance, if you just give your cat chicken and rice, that is really, really bad because it's going to lack taurine, and taurine is an essential amino acid. Like it is life-threatening if you don't give a cat taurine, it will die over time. And so that's where, you know, for the vets out there that says raw feeding is bad, homemade raw is bad. there is a point to that. If you're not giving it a balanced diet, if it is not nutritionally sound, then yes, it's better to just feed it wet, right? But if you are basically, covering all your bases, you add in the raw meat, you add in the organ meats, you add in, the bones, the tendons, all of those things, and you add in the supplementation, then you don't have anything to worry about. But, I think we all do the best we can. And based on their education, that they just don't have enough information on nutrition. So I think, if you feel uncomfortable without if you want to get a vet's, make sure and okay by a vet, I would go look for a holistic vet that is familiar with raw diets, because you'll find that they are a wealth of information. So I think everybody should reach out, see if they can find a holistic vet in your area, because they look at the whole picture and they utilize other resources, not just medicine and drugs and surgery, but they look at the whole body in that context.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And Becky
to that real quick, if you guys are
Becky's
if somebody's looking for a holistic vet in your area, so that you can maybe run some of this information by them, or maybe you're just looking to switch a vet to your cat to a holistic vet, you can go to ahvma.org. That's ahvma.org. Lindsay will drop the link, I think.
Trisha already dropped it in there. Hey, Trisha.
Yay.
Oh, Trisha already dropped it. Awesome. Yeah. We'll pin that. Actually, can you just pin that right now? It says pin comment right there. So you can click on the link that is pinned here, and just find your state. It says at the top, find a vet, and you can find a holistic vet that's closest to you in your area. What was the next question?
Well, Betty Justice said too, that her vet also told her that it is where the come and go. I too have been told that raw will make them sick. So I think that.
Well, and Betty, I'll say this to you, is that our cats have been eating a fully balanced raw diet for 4 years now, all of them, and they have not yet once been sick. We check their, they get their blood panels. Our older ones get it twice a year. Our other ones get it once a year. And they are all perfectly healthy cats.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've actually noticed, like my cats are actually healthier. Like you can just tell they have more energy. They've put on weight. Their fur looks better. All the problems that they had went away. So I had a kitty that was borderline. Of course, it's a male cat, right? Kirby, the one with IBD, that would basically starting to get like the early symptoms of a urinary disorder, because I would notice, like, if you ever see a cat's penis sticking out and he's licking it, that's never good, because that just means something's wrong, right? And so he was doing that. Actually, I noticed basically when he was on, the dry/wet food diet. And so ever since he's basically been on raw, that's gone away. But I will say, like I occasionally would use basically the freeze dry without rehydrating it, which is why rehydrating is so important. But basically that was, sometimes I'll feed them dry, like dry freeze dry as a treat. And I've noticed when I do, they basically, the same little problem comes out, his, he's like basically has like, basically not enough moisture, things are getting caught. So when I rehydrate it, nothing. So it's just really important to show like how much moisture plays such a big role. But as far as overall health for all of them, you can just tell it's like night and day difference. So they lost at least a few years in age minimum, and in cat years, that's a lot. I wish I could turn back time that much, right? What can I eat?
Hey, Jenny is here. Jenny is one of my favorite cat moms with sweet Carl. She said, I remember. And she's got some big dogs as well. She said, I remember when I first started to feed raw, I was scared because my pets stopped drinking a ton of water. Yeah. And I think that's one of the great points that you make is, or in
moisture.
Your course, is the moisture, and how these creatures, these beautiful babies, have literally evolved to get their moisture from their food. That's how they're body processes it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And especially cats, because cats by nature have a low thirst drive. Yeah. So they're desert animals. They aren't made to sit and drink at a water bowl like most dogs will drink their water. But unless they're raw fed, and then they don't really need as much. But cats won't. Cats are stoic beings, and they actually won't do that. So they're eating their dry food, and they may drink a little bit of water, but they're not drinking enough water, because there's no way with that low thirst drive that they can get the amount of moisture that their bodies need from that water bowl. So they have to have it in their food. So if they're only eating dry food, they are constantly living in a state of chronic dehydration. And that is one of the leading causes of urinary issues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you
Okay.
look at dry food, like I mean, like if you look at like a regular mouse, right? Like in a perfect world, if your cat's like out, it's wild, field mice is a big source of like food source for the cats. They're about 70% moisture. Well, if you look at dry food, it's only about 10. So I mean, that's a lot of moisture to try to make up. And let me just, honestly, when's the last time you saw your cat like really go to town at a water bowl, right? Like that never happens. So that's why they're chronically dehydrated. And so once you basically get them to either at least to canned food, or raw food, that moisture level is corrected and they won't need to drink water. So that's actually, if a cat's drinking water, chances are it's actually dehydrated already. And that's why it's reaching out to water. So.
Yeah.
Here's a question, and I know I don't want to run out of time because there's some good questions here. So Jenna said, my 19-year-old ragdoll has been fed high quality canned for at least 10 years.
Awesome.
I tried to transition him to pre-made raw several years ago when his renal numbers started to rise. I started with tiny bites of raw stirred into the can. He would refuse to eat it for several days. I've tried this for months now. How would you recommend
I get him to eat.
I get him to eat the raw?
I would look at some different, so basically I would try some different things. And, honestly, so cats are masters of manipulation. Like you sometimes just have to out stubborn the cat. And so with that being said, I mean, your cat is 19, so I can understand it's like, you could try a few different things, like maybe like tuna water, put a little bit of tuna water on there. It sounds like you've already mixed it in. So maybe find their favorite one and mix it in. The other thing too is Flora is actually this probiotic. It's apparently like crack for kitties and they really like the taste. So that might be something you might want to try. I like to basically do a little bit of freeze dry and put the freeze dry on there. But I mean, honestly, if you, I don't know how many days you did not let your kitty, like if you just don't feed the cat and only offer it raw mixed in with some of the canned, if you maybe just like wait, like let it be hungry for a day, because if you out stubborn the cat, the cat will eat. Cats are not suicidal. They are going to eat. They're not anorexic, unless they're truly sick. But I mean, you can find different things as far as like, maybe it could be like some chicken juice, or maybe if you've made some meat, it's a little bit of juice from the meat to kind of encourage it, but even little baby steps. And it's just, just constantly letting him try it. So since you have a kitty that's quite stubborn, it sounds like, I would start, like you said, you got pre-made, just get a little bit and just put a little bit in there. It's just tiny steps, because sometimes, to the lady's points, it can take 6 months, but I would,
we there was actually someone recently in the industry that told us that it took her a long time to transition her cat to, would not touch the raw food in the wet food. But what she did was she took a little piece of that raw food and put the wet food on a plate and then put the raw food on the outside of it, so that the cat wasn't forced to eat the raw food, but it was associating the smell of the raw food with eating the wet food. So, and I was like, wow, we didn't even think about that. But that's, I mean, just another little tip on ways that you can,
and then I wanted to also say too, some kitties are kind of particular about their protein. So it depends on what type it is. Like some cats will only eat, like if it's like, for instance, cats don't like beef, or they don't usually like lamb that much too. So a lot of times they like poultry, like chicken and different things like that, but they maybe try a different one, like a rabbit one. I think a lot of times if you go to your natural pet stores, they actually have the smaller ones or samples even. So that might be a really great segue to try, and it sounds like they can be stubborn, but I mean, with enough encouragement and time, and sometimes switching the protein up, you'll be able to find that for the cat. But also another thing you may want to try is when you are cooking your own food, before you make the meat, just cut off a little piece and just offer it, because, and just kind of, try and see if there's something that your cat kind of gravitates towards. And keep in mind, kitties are just like people, sometimes like people have a texture issue, especially if you spent the last 19 years of your life eating a certain texture. Crunchy, she's pointing you out. But I mean, they get used to that. So they want that crunch, or they're used to that scent, because with commercial food, they add in really strong scents to entice the appetite. They add in different things to stimulate appetite. Exactly. So, and it's going to be a transition for kitty, but with patience and, maybe switching out a few different things, trying different protein types, you'll find something that kitty likes.
Yeah. And we always say patience and perseverance pays when it comes to raw. You just have to do it consistently. There's another study that was done in Europe that on I think it was I can't remember, 19 cats or something like that, but they did a study on cats on feeding them or them eating a balanced diet, right? So they had 3 different types of food. for them. 2 of them were completely unbalanced. And the first one was fish flavored, and the second one was chicken flavored.
Right.
And then they had the third food that was completely balanced, and it was an orange flavor. And cats don't like citrus, right?
No, they
So
don't.
they did this study just to see, like, do cats know what their bodies need? And at first, they all went to the fish. And then over time, they switched over to the chicken. And by the end of the study, they were all eating the orange food. And that's because they knew that their bodies needed something more. So if given the choice, consistently over time, your cat will choose the better food. And I like the idea about the proteins too, because it's interesting.
Yeah.
We thought that our cats loved chicken because they loved the wet food. It always had chicken in it, almost always had chicken in it, right?
Yeah.
So when we went to raw, we were very interested to find out that it's not still the same protein that they like. They might like cooked chicken, but they're not that big of a fan of raw chicken. They prefer rabbit, you know? So it's interesting to just like play with it and find out what they like. So,
okay, Becky has another question. What if you cook the raw, does it lose the nutrition? So
Very
speak
good
to
question.
speak to the heat for a minute.
Absolutely. So it actually does. Because the thing is, a lot of times with raw meat, they have really sensitive nutrition, right? So like, for instance, if you cook taurine, if you cook meat, taurine is actually found in muscles that work the hardest. That's why it is the most prominent in chicken hearts, right? Because hearts is actually our biggest muscle that we use. We don't realize it's a muscle, it's an organ, but it's a muscle. And so basically, the thing is that once you put heat to it, you lose about 50% of it, right? And so that goes for other things that are very sensitive to heat, like, there's like Q10 in raw meat, there's vitamin A, there's vitamin D, there's vitamin E, there's so many vitamins, but, once you put heat to it, you destroy a lot of it. So if you ever look on the back of any commercial type of cat food, you'll notice they put all of these things back in because, heat processing destroys it. And so in a perfect world, we would be able to eat raw meat. However, our stomach is not going to be happy with that, right? So that's why basically we cook our meat. But since their stomach is different, they're designed to eat it, they won't get sick from it. It's actually best to actually leave it raw. That way they can get all of those natural, biologically available nutrients. That's just what their body's designed to absorb, and basically not have to add all these things in. Now we do add a few supplements in, because with our commercial, with our farm animal supply, they just don't get the highest quality feed. There's a lot of other things in there. We depleted a lot of resources. So plus we plan to freeze it, right? Freezing itself actually destroys nutrients as well too. So that goes for humans, and it goes for our pets. So fresh is best. But I mean, so that's why we do add a little bit of the supplements back in to basically fight that, but it's nowhere close to the list of supplements that you'll see in commercial pet food. But that's a really great question.
Yeah.
And Christy, I know we're getting close on time here, but Christy asked, I lost it, but she said, I need someone to walk me through step by step how to make raw food.
Well, that's great. That is a great segue,
Isn't that
Christy.
a great question?
Thank you for your question.
Something we're super excited about.
Yeah. So Annie has put together.
Wait, real quick. I want to just real quick, because I know a lot of people were just joining us. Well, I just wanted to preface. So a lot of people were jumping on saying, what are we talking about today? So I just want everyone, just a reminder, we're talking with Annie Chang of Healthy Pet Hacks and
prescription diets and raw feeding for cats.
But what we're super excited about is
but what we're super excited about is Annie has spent hours and hours and hours putting together, and I went through it this morning. It's amazing. This awesome 100% free program for you guys on how to, on raw feeding, basically in general, all the steps of the best ways to feed your cat, and offers 2 free recipes as well. Thank you so much for that, by the way.
You're very welcome.
This is just a beautiful, beautiful resource. And she has put together, and it's very, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's
relatable. It's easy,
it's simple,
very easy to follow. And so the link to that, if you guys want to take that free workshop, the link to that is in the description of this live right now. Lindsay has also already dropped it and pinned it in the comments
Lindsay.
here. So if you guys want to join that, please do. You're going to learn a lot. And you'll hear some of the stuff that we talked about today, but you'll also learn a whole lot more about the reasons behind why our cats need to eat a species appropriate diet.
One of the things I really love about this course that you offer is that it answers so many of the questions that are coming up as you're going through it, right? Like you really do a great job of making it very simple, straightforward, digestible, and
in snippets too.
Yeah,
in
in
snippets.
snippets.
So it's let's talk about this,
Yeah.
and then let's go to the next and
brilliant.
talk about this. And it's very, very, very well put together.
Yeah.
So I encourage all of you guys, whether you're raw feeders or not raw feeder or not even interested in raw feeding, take this course. Just watch it. You know, like it's
Take
it's
this
really
free
amazing.
course, you guys.
It's free.
Take this free course.
It's free.
It is.
Thank
It's
you.
a no-brainer. And I think let's talk a little bit about what you do. I mean, this is something we're so excited to meet your passion in this, right? So tell us a little bit about what is Healthy Pet Hacks. What is
so
it?
basically it's a company that I've developed because I just, I think one of the things is as pet owners and pet moms and dads, like we just need a resource where like everything is there. We don't always have time to do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like hours of research. And so what I wanted to do is create a holistic program where it's natural, where it's basically biologically friendly, where pet moms and dads can just go and just, basically learn. And so it's basically an education program. It's an education company. And it's just basically wanting to share like the best resources that, my team is basically put together and make it where it's easy for you to basically absorb it without having to spend all those hours. And so I do want to say in that free course, you will actually be getting 2 recipes. So one with a meat grinder, if you have one, the other one is actually without a meat grinder that uses real bones. So if you're kind of hesitant on doing raw because you don't have a meat grinder, one of the recipes that I will be giving you for free, that actually does not require a meat grinder. You just need a blender. So I just wanted to make sure you don't need any special equipment. And that's one of the things that I wanted to provide as a resource, just because, that's one of the big hurdles as a cat parent, when you first start raw, is you don't want to buy the equipment without knowing that your cat's going to eat it. So I hope that helps.
Sure.
You know, I don't know if we shared this with you the first time that we met, but so when we started doing our own DIYs, and supplementing, we killed so many kitchen appliances because, like
it's
blender,
documented. It's on YouTube.
And it's on videos. But I mean, that's a big thing though, because people are like, I don't even know what to get. So just having answers, just having help, finding the right resources is a huge help.
Yeah.
To all of
And
us.
so I've killed a few appliances. So the tip is, do not ever try the chicken recipe in a blender. You will kill your blender. I'm just letting you know. I've tested on 4 different ones now. That's why in the recipe for the blender, you use Cornish hens. And I've tested it. I've tested it in multiple blenders. So that one is perfectly fine to use. But don't use the chicken recipe on the blender. You will kill the blender.
A little too late for us, but good info for everybody else. So is there anything else you want to add, Andy?
What have we not touched on that would be?
I don't know. I think this has been a really great conversation, and I think that if anybody has any questions, you can always reach out to me as well on Facebook, or if if you're looking at the replay, if you missed the link, you can always DM me and just ask me to email it to you or message it to you as well. But
where do they find you?
You can look for me on Facebook, and it's on Healthy Pet Hacks with an S.
Healthy Pet Hacks.
Yes, Healthy Pet Hacks. So we'll have that. We'll actually go back and put that in the description up here too. I don't know why I didn't do that the first time around, but I know that you have a whole lot more information. But I think this is a good starting point for everybody and anybody that is interested in learning about ways to do some DIY from home to really help your cats save some money and help your cats eat the healthiest diet and hopefully avoid future health issues or fix health issues that they might be dealing with right now. So you can find her at Healthy Pet Hacks. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And especially the illumination on the prescription diets. I think that's for so many of us, we're scared to do anything different in general. And if we're feeding a prescription diet, there's already that mentality that this is what they need. So to hear your journey and how you've developed this awesome company is really exciting. So Annie, thank you so much.
Yes,
thank you ladies
so
for having me on the show. Thank you.
All right, we hope to have you back soon.
See ya.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.